In the bustling streets, people are running for their lives. The man pushed away the woman in front of him. We don't recruit women over 30. The woman was spat on for being old and ugly and had to leave in 8 days. She couldn't believe how ugly she looked, so she quietly walked over to the window and looked up. What came into her eyes was her face and her skinny body. The woman stretched out her hand trembling. I'm only 25 years old, look so old. She drops her eyes, as if she's about to leave the world and doesn't notice what's behind her, until the car door opens, and a pair of high-quality leather shoes take the lead. The man who was just driving her away ran to the president's side like a lapdog. When the woman heard the voice, her feet suddenly stopped. Her eyes were shocked. Could it be the familiar President Xi? At this time, the beautiful woman asked him to go to dinner, but also to accompany her to go shopping for clothes. Today's new products on the market. The woman jerked her head back, wanting to see their faces clearly. Sure enough, the situation in front of her surprised her. Mr. Xi just also saw her. The woman became more and more stunned, staring blankly at the man in front of her. Mr. Xi seemed to feel something and looked towards her. His mind was full of thoughts for a while. He was suddenly shocked. Could it be that you are Xia Xinghe? I did not expect. The beauty was also surprised. Gosh, how did you become like this? Xia Xinghe, who was himself, but lowered his head and bit his lips tightly. Her body trembled all over, whispered that you have recognized the wrong person. At this point she instantly rushed down, wanting to escape the scene, but when she passed in front of Mr. Xi, she explained weakly to him, I'm not Xia Xinghe. Mr. Xi obviously wouldn't let her have her way and shouted at her to stop. Xia Xinghe collapsed and ran forward, her mind constantly flashing ridiculous images. After all, could not let them see such a messy self. The man quickly chased forward. Xia Xinghe, do not run again. You stand still. The man's pace is very fast. A hand grabbed the woman's wrist. She was stunned to look at the back. In front of the familiar figure of this grabbed himself, only to see her break free from the restraints haphazardly. Her mouth constantly muttered, I am not Xia Xinghe, I am not. She nervously ran away again, quickly leave this place. But she only thought of escaping quickly. But she didn't realize that there was a car in front of her, which was about to collide with her. The man kept shouting in fear, Xia Xinghe, be careful, there is a dangerous car. She had already seen the car, but it was too late to avoid it. I don't know what she was thinking, but she chose to collide with the car as hard as she could. After she collided with the car, her body quickly fell downwards, and her big eyes of dismay, looking at the free bird in the air empty, until she couldn't support herself any longer. Her body gradually lost consciousness, but when she slowly closed her eyes, she recalled her own life. When she was very young, it was the happiest time of her life. Her father took her to the playground and played with her. So it's not that I have no one to love me, but that my own father is sick. I shouldn't have suffered so much, but my father is gone. The First People's Hospital in town is treating her. The patient's injuries aren't serious, just a slight concussion from a blow to the head. Her injuries will heal quickly, but she's chronically malnourished and needs to take care of herself. But how could she be chronically malnourished? She was given a large sum of alimony during the divorce. The man looked at her from above. In the end, what has gone through to become like this? She is still in a coma, but the corner of her eyes slipped a tear. The man's eyes suddenly widened, as if he had never seen this side of her before. The beauty also secretly said it was a pity. Once you were no match for me, and now you've been hit by a car again. Xia Xinghe's face became old and ugly, obviously even less of a match for her. She quickly threw herself into the man's arms. Why don't we leave now? We still have to plan the wedding. After a moment of contemplation, the man decisively answered and left. The beautiful woman was in a good mood, bouncing and leaving with him. Time flew by in the ward, and the woman seemed reluctant to wake up at all. But I don't know what she was dreaming about. But her eyelashes began to flutter, only to see her eyes open violently, as if she was startled by something. After she hurriedly sat her day up, she looked around but became even more silent. Xia Xinghe's eyes became more and more awake, and she remembered all of her missing memories. Inside the luxurious family gathering, Big Mother wanted to set the date for her children's engagement, but when everyone's eyes looked at the man, the scene became silent. The pink-haired beauty suddenly stands up and gently reminds the man to answer his mother's question. She pretended to look pitiful. Mubai, are you still thinking about Xia Xinghe? I can't even imagine that she can toss herself into that state. I really don't know how to cherish it. Mubai shook his wine glass contemplatively. She has made her life so miserable. And he hurriedly held up her mobile phone. Let's set your wedding date for the 2nd of October. The mobile phone shows that people are taking a break on the day, and he became very happy when she fixed the date. Mac by Xia Xinghe. Are you two okay? Tianxin shyly hung her head. Everything will follow the arrangement of the elders. Mu Bai didn't have a problem with it and let them decide in a cold tone of voice. Obviously, Big Mother was a bit dissatisfied and excitedly took Tianxin's little hand. Our Tianxin is such a good girl. This time she can finally become my daughter-in-law. She looked up shyly. We'll be a family after the wedding, but some were happy and some were sad. A glass of fruit juice was thrown to the ground. Xiaolin clenched her fists angrily. You don't deserve to be my family. NT suddenly shouted. Lin, why are you so careless? Apologized to Tianxin. At this moment, a white hand slowly pulled out a handkerchief. Tianxin went to the child's side and tried to wipe the stains off his body. But Xiaolin didn't accept the offer and told her to go away in a cold tone. He quickly jumped down and left, leaving the woman standing at a loss for words. Mu Bai picked him up and said he would take him to the washroom to clean himself up. Ignoring people's astonished gazes, he took the child straight to the bathroom. Xiaolin sat her down unhappily, ignoring the handkerchief the man handed him. When Mu Bai tried to wipe him, he held out his little hand to prevent him from being touched. He realized that the child's mood was not right. Don't lose your temper and tell me what's wrong. Xiaolin revealed his amber eyes and said angrily that he didn't like Inti Chu. Mu Bai's gaze condensed at the words. For a moment he didn't know how to reply. Although I don't have feelings for Chu Tianxin, she is very good to Xiaolin and mother likes her very much. If we have to get married, she's perfect for it. But the babe in front of us doesn't like it. Xiaolin explains to him. She is nice to me to please you. She treats me as a tool to climb up to you. But Mu Bai doesn't believe it at all. Why does the baby speak so harshly? Xiaolin says the truth is hard to hear. You can marry whoever you like. I'm just redundant. After he told the man of his dissatisfaction, he jumped down violently and wanted to leave. Mu Bai watched him leave in a daze, not knowing what to think for a moment. Sure enough, he seemed to have come to his senses. Who taught you to talk to your father like that? Xiaolin stood still and waited for his father's next words of instruction, but his hands were clenched into fists, as if his birth was a mistake. Little Lin turned back with a very aggrieved look. I'm a motherless child. Isn't that a lack of upbringing? Mu Bai was stunned for a moment. Xiaolin never cried or asked where his mother went. He hurriedly walked over to the baby and gently wiped away his tears. I thought Xiaolin didn't care, but he kept it to himself. It's my fault as a father for not understanding my child's feelings. Mu Bai picked up the baby. Let's go home and talk about this matter. Little Lin nodded pitifully into his father's arms, but the man's mobile phone suddenly rang and kept vibrating like crazy. He had to pick up the phone to see which one of them was being, but the news from the other side surprised the Super CEO. Xiaolin felt his father's consternation for the first time and asked what had happened. Inside the hospital, the lights are on, waiting for the president to arrive. The nurse bowed and apologized. We only left for a while and Miss Shaw disappeared. Mu Bai looked ahead with a grave expression. As the president, he was at a loss. He drove on the street, carefully watching the surrounding situation. After all, that woman is very seriously injured. Where the hell she ran away? The money given did not take with him. The more he thought about it, the angrier he got, and he hammered the steering wheel in anger. This woman really can interface with his own. She does not care about his body. At this time in the police station, they are still working seriously. Xia Xinghe Saturday opposite to the police. After recovering his memory, he took the information and found the police station. The police carefully looked through the information. Miss Xia, you were 6 years ago. Was someone deliberately murdering you? 6 years ago my father was critically ill. I rushed back from abroad to visit him. At that time, because we were panicking, we found a car following us. You can see it in the rearview mirror. And the car's model is clear too. I told the driver, Uncle Lee, to try to lose him. After all, visiting your father is the most important thing. But after a while of chasing, the car was following us closely. Uncle Lee turned the steering wheel frantically, but found that he couldn't lose the car. But the car behind us was rushing towards us. I told Uncle Lee to turn right and avoid it. The man in the car behind me seemed to be laughing coldly, and suddenly crashed into the car like a force. The man was steering the car and sent it flying, until blood dripped out of the car window. I was lying on the ground, unconscious from my injuries, and the pain was so great that I couldn't move. I'll never forget what that man did to us that day, and the look of triumph on his face when he thought I was going to die. The police are wondering if Misha has a grudge against someone, or if she has a suspect. Turns out she was a high achiever before, one of those intellectually superior masterminds. I suspect it was my stepmother and her daughter, who was not my father's child, but I didn't inherit a single cent after my father's death. If my father hadn't contacted the Tsai family before he died, Xia Xinghe wouldn't have taken me as his wife. Once the police understood the circumstances, they told her they'd follow up and find out. After she left the police station, the moon was already high in the sky. She walked down the street forlornly, her silhouette stretched out for a long time. Life is really unpredictable. A deliberate murder and failed marriage. Reduced to become a yellow woman, she stopped feeling sorry for the world, adjusted her mind, and knocked on the door. The door was opened in an instant, but inside it was incredibly bright. A man rushed towards her. "Why did you come back from there? And it's so late." Apparently he noticed something. His sister's forehead was injured. He quickly embraced her, but this move left her a bit bewildered. At that moment, the room was brightly lit, but a violent sound rang out. Her uncle rushed over. "Xinghe, what's wrong with you?" I saw his expression was incredibly panicked. "Who hit you like this? Does the child still hurt?" She was touched and looked at her uncle, gently reassuring them that she was fine. Since her father's death, Uncle Xia took his place. He used his thin body to carry the whole family. At the time of my memory, Xia Ji could have gone to the best university, but for the sake of the family, he only went to a nearby university and was forced to grow up early. I was touched and hugged them tightly. "I'm fine, but this car accident has restored my memory." Their gazes were a bit worried. "Have you really recovered your memory?" Xia Xinghe, but with a solemn face. "Those who took my things, I'll make them pay back." The secretary was just about to take out her mobile phone when the president snatched it away. According to the investigation, Xia Xinghe has changed many jobs in these 3 years. She has worked as a cleaner and dishwasher in order to take care of her family, but she was sidelined and humiliated at every turn, and her 25-year-old flower-like appearance was as haggard as 35 years old. But Xia Xinghe was puzzled. Didn't she get alimony? Did something go wrong? He felt more and more strange, so he quickly went to find his mother. "Mother, tell me honestly, did Xia Xinghe receive alimony back then?" After so many years, his mother didn't want to explain to him. As the CEO, he had already realized that the alimony was not paid to her. "Why didn't you tell me?" Her mother said it wasn't because she didn't want it. The woman was stubborn and eccentric. She just didn't want it. "After all, your marriage was a mistake. She's got her arms and legs and won't starve." Suddenly, Bai realized that he had been wrong. If Shaolin knew what had become of her mother, she would blame him. So he didn't wait. He picked up his mobile phone and went to look for his precious son. Instead, he entered the number and told the driver to hurry over. His expression and his coldness instructed Changdan to prepare the car. Something had to be done. "Xinghe, we haven't seen each other for a few years. I didn't realize you've done so much in silence. I owe you. I will make up for it. I won't let you suffer." At this time, Xia Xinghe's room door was knocked. Xia Ji pushed open the door of her room and walked in. "I made you something rice. Eat some and rest." She hurriedly expressed her thanks. She was really a bit hungry after not eating for a day. Jiawensi has really grown up and has now been sharpened by life and become a gentleman. Xia Ji said he graduated this year. He wanted his sister to rest at home. He was responsible for earning money to support the family. Xia Xinghe definitely believes his brother. "But you don't have to worry about me. I'm fine too." Obviously, Xia Ji doesn't believe it at all. "You used to go to school in the S school. If you didn't suffer a change of heart." She lost her head and lowered her head. She fell from the clouds into the mud. Surely she would be in pain, but she suddenly smiled slightly. After all, she was never ordinary. "So what if I didn't graduate? So what if I've been divorced and had children? I'll get back on my feet. Don't you understand me? Kai, what kind of job are you looking for?" Ji says he's studying computer science, but he's not going to work for Sai's. Sai's business is based on real estate and hotels, but Xia Xinghe chose the internet market. Today, under his leadership, Sai's company is one of the top companies in China. Xia Xinghe himself is very good. He's made it to the top 10 of the global Forbes list. Sai's technology is advanced and management is perfect. It's a good platform for development. Of course you can go there. But Jiawensi shook her head frantically. She wouldn't go. They were so bad to her sister. I had to rush out to appease. Then we worked together to open a network company. Only after everything was done did Xia Xinghe see the photo album on the table. She turned her head sideways with mixed feelings. This is a story full of nostalgia. She gently stroked the frame, as if she could touch her baby son. Sure enough, she became full of motherly love. Mom will definitely be reunited with Shaolin. Just as the sun was rising, a man rushed to the small huton and knocked on the door. Jiawensi didn't know who he was, so she took him to her sister's room. It was actually her ex-husband, Xia Xinghe, who wanted to talk to her very calmly. "In fact, I've already investigated the divorce compensation matter, and I have a lot to do with it. After all, you're Shaolin's mother. I owe you this, so take it." Only to see him take out a check and quickly hand it to Xia Xinghe. She looked up at her ex-husband. For a moment moment she didn't know how to explain herself. I don't need this at all. I don't want to have anything to do with you either. The man was a little upset when he heard that. Was it so hard to accept his good intentions? Besides, they still had a child. But she hooked up the corner of her mouth, as if mocking the current self. Sure enough, her gaze became firm. I didn't ask for this money 3 years ago, and I won't ask for it 3 years from now. She slowly put on her shoes and stood up, ignoring her injured body. She then put her books on the windowsill and felt the cool breeze outside. I'm still too weak to raise Xiaolin. She's waiting for her mother. As long as my ex-husband takes care of Xiaolin, there is nothing more between us. Xi Mubai was engrossed in his thoughts for a while, but realized that Xia Xinghe had become a different person. But Xiao Ji began to urge him to leave. The man looked deeply at her and then left her room. In the inpatient department of the People's Hospital, the patients are being examined. Xia Xinghe was weekly on an IV drip. The doctor was constantly instructing from the sidelines, taking care to let the patient rest more. Her beautiful eyebrows wrinkled. Hospitalized for a few days. It's another big expense. Since I have recovered my memory, I can no longer drag my family down. What is my brother doing? Kai said he has a big job. If he can deliver it, he can earn 2,000 yuan, but he can't finish it by himself. But his brother is in a hurry to pay it. She had to have enough financial strength to get Xiaolin back and take care of her family. So she quickly looked at her brother, wanting to try out his work. Xia Xinghe's eyes shone brightly. Let's start a new life from here then. At that moment, Xiaoji handed her the computer, concernedly urging her not to work too hard. She didn't have an explanation for this. She hadn't touched one of these in years and wondered if it would be rusty. As her fingers reached out, she realized they were shaking. So she quickly pressed the keyboard, and her own field came back to her. She was happy for a moment, and then she operated it again. Everything she did now was incredibly familiar to herself. This small game is very basic, but the process is a bit cumbersome. The average person is very easy to make mistakes, but the tedious process requires a high degree of concentration. If you're not careful, you'll make a mistake, and you'll need to keep testing and modifying. But for me, I don't need to modify, I don't need to look up information, and I don't need a lot of time, because I know all these operations by heart. As long as I lift my hand, I know what to write. Even the thinking process can be omitted. Xiaoji's mouth was wide open. His sister actually knew about computers, and was even powerful to this extent. The speed of programming was so fast that he couldn't see the codes at all. This kind of proficiency of Xia Xinghe was simply at the level of a top programmer. But she had no time to distract herself from explaining it. Xiaoji suddenly couldn't believe it. Was it dreaming? Time passes very quickly. 45 minutes after the ward. Suddenly, she shouted with joy that she had easily done this difficult programming for them. Xiaoji stood and watched the whole program. His legs were shaking with fatigue, only to see him stiffly walk to the bed. You really did it? This programming is difficult. Xiaoji could not believe it in the slightest. Is this still his frail sister? Xia Xinghe nodded affirmatively. You tested to see if there are any problems. So he hurriedly took over the computer and tested it frantically. I didn't expect that after the test was over. It showed perfect accuracy. The program works perfectly. Not a single error. It's genius level. In such a short period of time. How do you actually successfully complete the? Xia Xinghe picked up the cup of water with satisfaction. Brett, go and find your senior brother. Xiaoji's eyes were glowing happily. Sister is really unbeatable. At this time, a man stood in front of the company's door, and in his hand was also carrying a bag known as the good stuff. But it's not that I won't lend it to him. I don't think I needs it yet. Ji was embarrassed and touched his head. It was my powerful friend who wanted to read it, and he had to read the best ones. It dawned on him that he was the one who made the software last time. So let's find a chance to introduce him. Ji said it was inconvenient for him, but he would introduce him to you if he had the chance. But when he was in a hurry to leave, he found the familiar people walking in front of him. He was shocked. Why is Xi Mubai here? Xiaoji thought to himself, I'll just pretend I don't know him. He's no longer related to my family anyway. But things often do not go as expected. Xi Mubai turned back in disbelief. Xiaoji, why are you here? Those books are very difficult. Not the top computer experts. It is really difficult to read and understand. The elder brother spoke out to help him explain. It was the person who helped make the small game who borrowed it. Xi Mubai's rare expression enriched. Is that the person who wrote the perfect method? Only to see his elder brother sitting down on his arse, intending to give the president a detailed explanation. He opened the computer and called up the programming. This is a bit older, right? But the method is very advanced and excellent. Using the method of 6 or 7 years ago, but can do more perfect than the current programming. In the end, what kind of person is it? Elder brother also let out a long breath. Is indeed a rare genius, but would such a person exist in Shaji's social circle? Obviously this question is idiotic, but he suddenly thought of one person, that woman who was his ex-wife. He loosened his tie with displeasure. It's true that his nerves have been too tense lately. How could it be Xia Xinghe? The elder brother helplessly waved his hand. I am also curious. If a Mr. Sai really want to know who it is, I will ask him to introduce me to him. Above the people's hospital, the sky is cloudless and peaceful. Xiaoji gnawed on an apple and kept praising. Sister, you know everything about computers. You're simply a genius. Xia Xinghe didn't think so. The computer era is updating fast. There are still a lot of things to be learned. But Zhao Wenxi told her not to be modest. She borrowed these books from her brother. Only top hackers can understand them. She said that these books are just what she needs. If there is a chance, she will thank her face to face. She finished the books very quickly, but her movements became incredibly fast. I need to master this knowledge quickly. The hacking competition will start soon. Xiaoji put down the apple in surprise. You really want to participate in the hacking competition? To get straight to the top in hacking, participating in a hacking competition is definitely the fastest way to get ahead. There's a lot of competition on the internet in recent years. Every company is developing core technologies for fear of being eliminated in the future. Once the network is broken, it's easy to go extinct. That's why hacking contests are very important. It's a competition between companies and hackers. In terms of reputation and ability, the winner can cooperate with the strongest company. I can only give you a better life by participating in the competition. Although Xiaoji believed in her skills, she had only just regained her memory. It was too difficult for her to win with that kind of lineup. Xia Xinghe smiled happily. After all this is not stressful for me in the slightest. Shi Mubai coughed lightly. This time the security protection system, incomparable before the hacker competition completed. Senior let him rest assured. This piece of our best will work overtime and night to complete the system upgrade. Shi Mubai turned around with a sense of relief, appearing to leave calmly on the surface. In fact, he was confident that if there was a chance, we would definitely meet again. At this time, Xia Xinghe was full of anticipation. After all, this is a battle of honor. It must be a must.